What I'm hearing is you keep this option on the table, but it was foolish to talk about it in public. Does anybody disagree with that?
Yeah, I disagree with it. I disagree. George, let me tell you, Barack Obama didn't understand there are now 100,000 Pakistani troops who have been moved to the border. They've moved 2 divisions to the border. In fact, one of them out of the high country on the Indian border. You right now have operations that are being taken in cooperation with American forces in Afghanistan. The last thing you do when you're trying to convince your allies all over the world to work with you is when you have one country which has taken 100,000 military personnel and moved them into that place, and we all know what the problem is. The problem is that you have the tribal chiefs in that strip in Pakistan accommodating the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. When you have a country which is cooperating, you don't tell them you're going to unilaterally move against them or you're somehow going to undertake this by yourself. Those mountain ranges in Pakistan are 16,000 feet high. We need the Pakistani army to work that with American support.
I want to stay on this subject. I want to stay on this subject and broaden out the conversation a little bit. And what I want to get into it is with a bit from President Bush's second inaugural address, where he made the spreading of democracy the core of his foreign policy. Here's what he said.
So it is the policy of the United States to seek and support the growth of democratic movements and institutions in every nation and culture with the ultimate goal of ending tyranny in our world.
Governor Huckabee, since that speech, there have been free elections in Gaza. They elected Hamas. There have been free elections in Lebanon. They empowered Hezbollah. There have been free elections in Iran. They elected President Ahmadinejad. Has President Bush's policy been a success, and would the spread of democracy be the core of your foreign policy?
Well, the problem is, George, sometimes you get what you want, you don't want what you get. And this is a great case of that happening. I don't think it's the job of the United States to export our form of government. It's the job of the United States to protect our citizens, to secure our own borders, which we have failed to do for over 20 years. It's the job of our government to make us free and us safe, and to create an enviable kind of government and system that everybody else will want, much in the same way I think we ended up seeing the fall of the Soviet Union. And as far as how do we get there...
So it wouldn't be the core of your foreign policy?
Absolutely not, because I don't think we can force people to accept our way of life, our way of government. What we can do is to create the strongest America, change our tax system, make it so that people are healthier, create the enviable education system on this planet, make sure that jobs come back to this country rather than disappear from this country. And if we do that kind of approach, we'll have the sort of freedom internally, secure borders, a safer nation. That makes a whole lot more sense to me than spending billions and billions and billions of dollars to try to prop up some government we don't even like when we get it, and people in this country are losing their jobs, losing their health insurance, and their kids are sitting with their heads on their desks sound asleep in school.
Congressman Paul?
Our responsibility is to spread democracy here and make sure that we have it. This is a philosophic and foreign policy problem, because what the president was saying was just a continuation of Woodrow Wilson's making the world safe for democracy. There's nothing wrong with spreading our values around the world, but it is wrong to spread it by force. We should spread it by setting an example and doing a good job here. Threatening Pakistan and threatening Iran makes no sense whatsoever. We went in, and I supported going after the Al-Qaeda into Afghanistan, but lo and behold, the neocons took over. They forgot about Osama bin Laden, and what they did, they went into nation building not only in Afghanistan, they went unjustifiably over into Iraq, and that's why we're in this mess.
Mayor Giuliani, both Governor Huckabee, excuse me. Both Governor Huckabee and Congressman Paul said they would not continue President Bush's policy. Would you?
George, I think the way you're defining it is incorrect. Democracy is not necessarily immediately going to elections. Democracy is broad.
Well, that was the way President Bush defined it, not me. But go ahead.
The way I look at it, democracy also requires a rule of law. It requires stability. It requires people not being afraid they're going to be killed every day when they go out on the street. Democracy is only a theory if you're living in an unstable situation. So sometimes democracy is the long-term goal, but in order to get there, you have to first build a rule of law. You have to first build respect for human rights.
So did we push for elections too quickly in Gaza?
In some cases, maybe going to elections so quickly is a mistake. maybe the thing to do is to first make sure that you've developed the bedrocks of democracy. You know, if you're living, so I learned this in New York City when I became the mayor. Of course, the situation was nowhere near as serious, but people were afraid to go out at night because crime was so rampant. I mean, we had all kinds of civil rights, but nobody could exercise them because they were too darn afraid to go out, too darn afraid to go to the movies or go buy groceries at the grocery store. First, you have to have a certain quality of life that allows you to be comfortable that you're going to exist, your children are going to go to school, you're going to be able to have a job, and your rights are going to be respected.
So
then elections start to mean something in the full picture of what a democracy is about.
So Senator McCain, would you follow what Mayor Giuliani is saying, maybe go a little bit slower on elections, not put the spread of elections quite at the core of your foreign policy?
We fail to appreciate that elections do not mean democracy, that it is rule of law. And rule of law, by the way, is beginning to take hold in Iraq. Just as peaceful and more secure, not totally secure neighborhoods in Baghdad and in Anbar and other parts in the Kurdish areas is beginning to take place, which will then allow true democracy to take place. It's naive to say that we will never use nuclear weapons. It's naive to say we're going to attack Pakistan without thinking